Okay, so here's how this goes. I'm going to introduce you, and then we're going to yap.
Okay, sounds good.
And like it is, as you know, because I didn't send you anything ahead of time. Like it's not prepared. Like I'm going to ask you a question, and we'll go wherever.
Yeah, I
All right,
like
cool.
that.
All right, so there are some people you meet in a specific space and time, and yet the relationship refuses to be confined to either of those things. We met Trevail and his family during our time in Salt Lake City, and from the beginning, there was something unmistakable about both him and his wife Laura. They are thoughtful, generous, deeply kind people, raising two of the most delightful kids you'll ever meet. But what has stayed with me most isn't just who they are in a room, it's who they are across distance. If I'm honest, I can probably count on one hand the number of times we have physically been in the same space. And yet, that has had absolutely no bearing on the strength of our connection, the consistency of our conversations, or the depth of our relationships. In a time when social media is often rightly criticized, I do think it's worth pausing and acknowledging something else can be true. These platforms have become the infrastructure that allows meaningful relationships to endure. When careers shift, when geography changes, when life pulls people in different directions, connection doesn't have to dissolve. And in many ways, friendships like this one are sustained because of it, and I'm grateful for that. Travail is someone who shows up in those spaces with intention. He engages, he asks questions that make you think more clearly, and when he answers, it's with care, depth, and a kind of creative intelligence that reflects how he moves through his work as well. Professionally, Trevail has spent the last decade shaping stories through motion, design, and brand, from leading motion graphics and narrative development at USANA, where he helped drive engagement across large digital audiences and contributed to major product launches, to his work at Western Governors University and Axis 41, where he elevated digital presence and built compelling visual campaigns. His through line is consistent. He understands how to translate ideas into experiences that actually move people. Now, through his own work at Campbell Design Co., he's continuing to build, partnering with brands, crafting visual identities, and pushing the boundaries of storytelling through motion and design. But beyond the resume, and honestly, what matters more for today's conversation is how he thinks about people. Because at the center of all of this is someone who understands that mentorship, like storytelling, is ultimately about connection. And that's why I'm especially grateful for this conversation. Trevail, I'm glad you're here.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm
So
glad.
jumping right in, when
Mhm.
you think about the word mentorship, who is the first person that comes to mind?
First person that comes to mind. Very recently, I know of a guy named Ben. I'll just leave it at first names.
Yep.
Um, and not even recently. I mean, I've known him for ever since I started working in this business. He's grown from being a sales guy who was bringing in, a million plus to our first joint, so sort of co-working space, to a guy who's running his own motion design company and bringing in money still, but also like engaging in just kind of being an all-around good guy, and then also bringing up people around him. And I consider myself to be one of them. He's kind of like my shadow mentor at this point. But we do have this mutual understanding of like, I reach out to him, I throw him an idea, and I say, hey, does this make sense? And he goes, you might want to tweak that a little bit. And then, I do a tweaking and I send things back and we throw things back and forth. And so, yeah, he's probably the first one that comes to mind.
I love the way that you like so naturally were like, when you have an idea and you send it to somebody for their feedback, like those people matter a lot.
Yeah, they
And like
really do.
I think especially if you're in a space where you're creating something, uh we need people to help us assess that. And I think it's part of the reason why I'm so excited to have this conversation with you, because I think in a creative space there are so many kinds of terrible feedback. like like no shortage of
Right.
terrible feedback.
Yeah.
And so finding your people and surrounding yourself with them, even just to like literally as fundamental or practical as that example is, we need each other. We need people.
We definitely do. Um, I realized that probably sometime late last year, well, actually, more like almost a year ago,
Yeah.
because I got laid off from my last job almost exactly 2 years ago.
Okay.
And then from there, trying to build this thing, Campbell Motion Design, and also reaching out to people and trying to figure out how in the world to do marketing and all this other stuff. And in the middle of that, I realized I was watching so many YouTube videos and flipping through social media and all this other stuff and realizing that I hadn't really talked to anybody about like the ins
Mhm.
and outs of business. And then a bunch of people came to mind, and I was like, why in the heck am I not talking to these people? And so I did start reaching out sometime after the summer to a bunch of people, including Ben and a few other people that I know have been in the business game for years, because that just made sense. It
Yeah.
made sense to get sounding boards. It made sense to pick from other people's experiences. And it didn't make sense for me to just sit here and stare at my screen or my phone and nod with all these business bros and their podcast equipment. And,
Uh-huh.
just like it just, I was isolating myself even more. And I felt that in a very real way.
And so I think a question I'd like to know from you, because I think, what you're describing is so real and so normal. And I think like I love that I talked about like social media gets a bad rap in the intro because it does, and for a good reason. Like I want to be really clear. Like just because I can talk about the positives of this space doesn't mean the negatives are not clear and known. But
Right.
like it feels like you're seeking input when you're watching a video or someone's talking about this. Like it can feel like, oh, I am doing that. And at the same time, it is simply not the same.
Yeah, it's not the same at all. You get some input and guidance in that, but then after a while, when you start sifting through a bunch of stuff, you realize in some fields there are people who are just not in your, um, what would you call it? Just basically not in your worldview of
Yeah.
how things work. And so the carpe diem, seize the day stuff only works for so long. Um, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, okay, none of this is really practical to what I'm doing, and I need somebody who can hear me on that,
Yeah.
and and bounce back what I really need.
If you could wrap up the entirety of why Real Talk exists into like one soundbite, like that would be it. Like I think there is this, like I feel this great need to normalize finding real people to have real conversations with because everybody's, and like this is where like the long form always exists on YouTube, even though I share all of these short clips. Like sometimes you need to listen to more, sometimes you need
Right.
more. It is really not that hard to create a really good 30-second soundbite. And like, but when you're actually trying to build something or find your way, that leaves you at a certain point feeling like there's got to be more to this, or I can't do it. Like is something wrong with me?
Mhm.
And so I don't know if you would relate to that specifically, but I think when you pivoted from I need to reach out to people, what was kind of the thing that pushed you to like, yeah, no, I need to reach out to some people?
Um, it was realizing that I had become kind of like a little golem in my basement, in this basement, where things were happening, and even at points where like months ago there are parts of the walls that were torn up because we had some water issues. And yeah, just going through life and stresses and things like that, and I just needed to get out of myself.
Yeah.
I can only hang out at the gym for so long. I need to do other things. Some of the other things I was doing already was helping with uh, various field trips and things like that at my kids' school. That was
Mhm.
fun. It's great to watch kids grow and learn.
Yep.
But also, I needed that, like, in some ways, adult supervision
Uh-huh.
for people to, I guess, pick out certain things that in conversation, they're like, okay, this might be something that you highly gravitate towards that you probably don't need to gravitate towards.
Yeah.
And just picking out parts of my personality that do very well in different environments, things that I would normally get down on myself for. You get talking to a few people, and they're just like, oh no, why don't you lean on that? Why don't you go with this? Why don't you not be so afraid of being yourself more, and like pull yourself into this, because I do have quite a bit of knowledge in motion design and the design world, but a lot of times I don't really lean on that. And so that's kind of what pulled me out of my
Yeah.
little basement golem session.
I think that's so helpful. Like, I think, things that we know are true, right? Like, our sense of self-identity or worth or skill or value is so informed by the people around us. And so if we're not surrounding ourselves with people who are in a space where they can kind of give you that feedback, I think we get twisted up pretty quick on like,
Right.
is that normal and healthy, or is that really egotistical and self-important, or like how do we calibrate those things without people around us to help us do that? And I think we've decided we don't need that. Like, we know who we are, or we know how we present,
Yeah,
or we know how we're trying to present, maybe more honestly. And like, that can be a scary place to be.
it can be. So going back to, I guess, feeling like you know yourself and being super confident. I mean, there are a couple times I've sent versions of my website and reels to my fellow designers and friends, and straight up got feedback like, I can't send this to somebody. You need to tweak this, this, and this, and gave me a laundry list of things.
Yep.
And I sat back for a second and went, because as designers, we might put on a brave face and smile on the call, but first we look at that email and go, what the, no, that's stupid. Like,
Uh-huh.
over and over and over, all the expletives, everything, have our little temper tantrums, like go get lunch, come back, blah blah
Uh-huh.
blah. But then you look at that list and you're like, okay, I rewatched this video 2 or 3 times. You were right. That little ball of energy that I animated does look like, seeds going to an egg, basically.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Um,
Thank you for telling me. I guess I'd rather
mhm.
hear it from you.
Yeah, yeah. I thought I was making something that was extremely artful and wonderful and beautiful, and you made me realize that maybe I needed to tweak that, or maybe in a practical way, maybe my website just wasn't readable,
Yeah.
or the SEO of the website sucked, all kinds of stuff. And so seeking that feedback, ironically, for designers is not a new thing, really,
Yeah.
because in design school you have to form that hard shell. Like, if you don't form that hard shell, a couple months in, you're gone, like, really easily.
I love that you talked about the function of design school. My senior graphic artist in my most recent role
Mhm.
used to say, like, you can't hurt me. Like, I've had to sit in a room and let people tell me all the thoughts and feelings they had about this thing. And like,
Yeah.
I think this is where like I've kind of resorted to, like, who are the creatives in my life? Like, who are the people who can say, like, you can handle this. You're gonna make it. You're gonna be better for it. And I think that there is such a unique function that not everybody has to endure that our design students did, because you've lived through every single one of those conversations.
So many conversations, and even more especially when you get out into the real world, because they don't really teach you like the soft skills in most of the design education. A lot of it is fundamental. Specifically, being a graduate from the U, it's there was a lot of like fundamentals and um, knowing design
Yep.
language, design history, things like that came with that education. But when it came to dealing with clients and dealing with real world situations, shifting deadlines,
Mhm.
um, scope creep, all kinds of things. We just never got that kind of education.
Yeah.
And so you sit in a meeting and a guy looks at it and goes, that looks like a PowerPoint presentation. And you just kind of have to go, okay, looks like a PowerPoint presentation. What makes you, what drew your eye to what looks like a PowerPoint presentation. What things are bothering you about this
Hmm.
design? That kind of thing. You start digging into why they feel that way, as opposed to being like, you know what, shut up. This meeting's over.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna go and have a coffee and take a walk around the block and forget you ever existed. You can't do that,
Right.
especially if you want to make money. So
Well, and like I think, you know, this I'm 0% surprised to find myself drawn to creatives in this conversation because when we think about the things we need to make ourselves do, that are, we're not making ourselves do them because they're comfortable. The things that are comfortable or easy, we tend to just do on our own. We don't need to make ourselves do those things.
right.
But I think there is an element here where the creatives in the conversation have a leg up because you are used to putting your soul in front of somebody and letting them critique it and being tough enough to keep going, even if it is hard in that moment and you do need to take that walk, get that cup of coffee, come back to it.
Yeah.
You have experience doing it. And in a space where maybe someone's professional or educational context or background has not provided them with that opportunity, it tends to be the creatives in the space who can say, here's how I've managed to persevere. Here's how I've managed to use those things to make myself better. And so I do just want to pause and thank you and others in the space for being willing to have the conversation, because when someone's saying, I don't know, this feels new and uncomfortable, how do I survive? Like, how have you survived?
Right, right.
There are people who've had to do this. And I think about creatives because some of us do it in our personal life. Creatives have to do it in their professional life too. Like with stakes on the line, right? Like this is not just like I tried something and I was brave and I decided it wasn't for me. Like, I don't know, I think balancing my budget is for me. I love that.
That does help. That does help. Having that lived in experience, but also kind of sharing and teaching that to other people helps. I was lucky enough to have taught a few people different parts of motion design throughout my career, and been complimented on my patience and whatnot with people.
Yeah.
And it's like, and also my willingness to just share information, because there are people that hide certain things, the way they do things, and I don't quite understand that need to hide those things, because eventually things will come out. The way you design things, something is small but big as file structure,
Uh-huh.
in a design, especially motion design in, say, After Effects. Like all these techniques, share with other people, and then when you share with other people, somebody may be like, hey, you took 2 hours to do this. I have a plugin that can do it in like 10 seconds. Like, let me show you that. And then you learn more things. Because I don't necessarily want to be a designer in, I don't know, my 50s and 60s and the one that's put on exporting PDFs because I can't do anything else.
Oh,
Um, and not saying that's a bad thing for all designers, but I've been around some of those sweet people, and you get kind of sad because you're like, man, you had a really good run, you had a lot of fun, but like nobody trusts you anymore, and so they kind of shelved
right.
you. So
I appreciate every single thing you just said. And I could talk about, I want to come back to some of them. The first one I want to start with is um, just genuinely when you work in a field that is continually innovating, which admittedly is not every field, right? Like we know that is not everyone's reality.
yeah.
But in this creative graphic space, the tech is always changing. How we consume it is changing. The algorithm that governs it is changing. Something can be really, really cool and 3 months later be really antiquated. So I think there is, like, in addition to needing to put your work out there and allow people to speak to and about it,
Yeah.
you also have to keep growing and keep innovating, or you end up getting a little bit left behind. And so I think that's an interesting topic of conversation around the mentorship conversation. Like, how do you personally try to keep up to date with what is happening in the world as it relates to motion graphics? And who do you like, what do you consume and view, but also who do you watch?
Being chronically online, everything.
Correct. Yes.
chronically online is kind of the curse of being a designer if you want to stay up. Most recently, there is the School of Motion, um, or Motion Design School. I think it's School of Motion. There are two of them. Motion Design School is cool, but also School of Motion, they have a weekly vlog, I guess they do,
Okay.
of news that comes out just about every Monday of different things that are happening in the industry, from different Cinema 4D plugins to a whole lot of AI talk recently. Um, and then you have just, they bring in creatives and no other creatives in the industry. And so they bring in some of their portfolios, they bring in student work from their classes, all kinds of stuff. So you can see what other people are intaking and how people
Yeah.
are, like, the output. And then just, I have a whole, actually probably like 6 folders of that are organized of like different pieces of design, from inspiration, what sites I most
Yep.
visit, something like Motionographer or Behance, to find some different pieces of information, to resources, to audio resources, to editing resources. And then some of those pop up when you're, most recently, I can't remember his name, unfortunately, but he made a tool that is a plugin so that you can edit in After Effects like you do
Yep.
in Premiere Pro. And that is huge. That is really cool because it even looks very similar.
Yep.
And so I only knew about that because I joined his live stream after subscribing to his YouTube channel. And I was watching, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And, from there, you just kind of stumble upon things,
Yep.
especially if you're chronically online. Like, those things will find you eventually. We talk about algorithms all the
Yep.
time. So yeah, just stuff like that. I mean, come from everywhere. Sometimes I'll get texts from friends about different plugins and things like that, and I'll share those.
I love how thorough you are in your responses. Because I think it helps, like, we're all told we live in the most connected and most resourced generation of all time. Everything, information's at our fingertips.
Mhm.
And then also people are like, well, there's so much. How do I kind of assess where to find myself or where to be or where to spend my time?
Mhm.
And I think what you just showed is like a pretty clear structure that can be followed. Like, what is your thing? I had that conversation with somebody recently where I was explaining, like, if this is the thing you want to do, where are the people who do that thing? And so I think about, like, you followed someone, you subscribed to their YouTube channel, and then you joined their live thing. Like, how are we putting ourselves in places that we're in the conversation? And I think you've shown a really logical way of, like, where is the conversation? What is beneficial to me, and how do you continue to find yourself in that space?
And it's not unlike, I like to think of it, and I apologize if I'm just rambling,
This is
but
great.
I like to think of it in, I guess I'm trying not to be a typical man, but sports terms. When it comes to following sports online, a lot of people wonder, they're like, oh, I don't watch rugby because I don't know its rules and blah blah blah. I don't know most of the rules of football, but I'm sat for Georgia football every fall. um, and from there you follow other teams, follow other players, you listen to different podcasts, maybe scroll through a feed on Blue Sky, a sports feed, and you start reading some of the articles from various journalists that you probably didn't know existed. Um, and so that's where you go from being like, I don't know how to do this, or I don't know where these people are, to like, okay, all of a sudden my feed is constantly these guys reposting this other people,
Yep.
and they all pretty much know each other because they're journalists, and then they all feed from these various different outlets. Motion design work is very similar to that, and it's a lot easier nowadays. Like,
Yep.
even when I was coming up in school, um, sorry, after this long story, I'll shut up for a
No,
second.
this is what we're here for. This is perfect.
we had an assignment to find a couple of designers and talk to them, like email them about their design and what you appreciated, and then ask if you could ask questions.
Yep.
And so I'm gonna probably butcher a couple other names, but Joran Krelars.
Okay.
I first stumbled on him on might have been Behance forever ago, decades ago, where he did a motion type called Motion, Moshun.
Okay.
And that thing just changed my outlook forever, because I went from going, I kind of like motion design. We didn't have any classes for motion design specifically when I was coming up. I kind of like motion design to like, oh, this looks like something I really want to do, because it's one, designing a typeface, and two, animating that typeface after that. And so in that, I found his email from, I can't remember whatever agency he was working for. And actually there was like a short back and forth between he and I.
Yep.
Because he was like, oh yeah, how did you find me? And so from there we just talked about our love of animation, and like he gave some techniques on how he did some of those typefaces. And it was one of those things that just changed me forever, because
Yeah.
I was just like, well, even though these people are on the internet and they're being featured on everybody else's sites, they're people.
Yes.
This may not be like this might be the biggest project that they've ever done.
Yeah.
Luckily, I mean, he's done like another dozen more. He's so good. But yeah, you come across these people. Another artist was, I believe her name was Grace Martinez, an art designer out of New York, and then Adhimas Batista from Brazil. And I got to have very small conversations with those artists, and figure out how they start their day. Like I start my day watching YouTube videos, spending like 30 minutes to an hour watching YouTube videos. And part of that is because I talked to Adhimas about how he starts his day. And he's like, well, I make my coffee, put my dogs outside, I walk to my studio, and I sit and I watch YouTube videos for about an hour. And I was like, hold up. You don't have to start work by like literally working. Like you can just kind of let your brain, come back together after just waking up and, realizing, I don't know, it snowed outside today. Let me look at the snow for a few minutes, as opposed to run.
Yes.
So.
And like, I thank you for like all of that was standalone valuable enough. Like that's all we could talk about for the episode, and it would be amazingly valuable. Because this is I'm going to tie it back to what I said in the beginning about social media. Like I think we have to figure out how to make the current era we live in work for us.
Right.
And I say that without support of any billionaire who owns any news source, outlet, social media function. They do exist. And so how do we utilize them for our own good growth and development? Because we are more able to access people across time and space than any generation prior to ours. And so I would say similarly, we were given an assignment my first semester in my PhD program, and the professor said, I'm going to preface this by saying, please don't stalk anybody, but we called the thing academic stalking. Like find someone who's written or contributed to a dissertation or a body of work or a journal or a framework or a system that you think is interesting and contact them. And like, I think I so appreciate you talking about that, because anyone can do that no matter what your thing is. One of the things that we know to be true about people who pursue their passions is they do like talking about them. And so like that doesn't mean that I'm not telling you whoever you email is going to email you back. I'm not telling you you're going to become best of friends. I am telling you it probably isn't impossible to find a way to contact them.
Not impossible at all.
Not impossible at all. And then to take that a step farther into like a tangible action of how you start your workday, like I love that yours is deeply personal and tied to somebody you actually talk to. I found something on Instagram that was like, here are how 6 of the greatest female voices in literature
Mhm.
structured their day. And very similarly, it was so freeing because so many of them are like, don't hit their stride in production till like 10 a.m. at the earliest. And then, like, maybe it's an afternoon thing. Maybe it is I write into the night as long as I can. And when I am done, I stop.
Mhm.
But I think for a culture that largely has prioritized the industrial revolution and the neurotypical brain of if you do not wake up and get started early, you are lazy. Like that is categorically false. That is not how everyone's brain or mind works.
Yep.
But when you can find somebody you know or trust or respect who has done significant things and hear them say, this is how I structure my day, and you're like, oh, I didn't know that was an option.
Yeah. Because corporate America does want you to have that clock in, clock out mentality. And every part of your day needs to be structured and timed. It just doesn't work out that way. If you're anybody who works from home or has to do anything with children, you realize that oftentimes the calendar, the clock that you have in your head just isn't going to work that way.
Yeah.
It's just not going to work that way. I'll get up early in the morning, earlier than I like, to go to the gym, to make sure that I'm home by the time my wife has to go to work. And then from there, getting my kids ready to go to
Mhm.
school. And I tell this story to people all the time about my youngest is that, she will sing and dance wherever. She just does that. It just, in her head is probably always a song and a dance, a choreographed dance to it. She just does.
Yep.
And so, there back when I did have to be out of the house at a certain time, and be at my desk at a certain time, it would infinitely frustrate me on some days where I would say, okay, it's 7:30, turn off the TV, go get dressed, do all this other stuff. And I go and start doing that. And I come back 30 minutes later and she's just singing to herself in her room, buck naked, and enjoying her life.
Uh-huh.
And there are times where, yeah, you're just super frustrated. You're just like, I told you to like
Yep.
get ready 30 minutes ago. But then stepping back, especially as a father, you're just like, okay, how much of this go 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 do I want to lay on my kids' shoulders?
Yep.
And how early?
Yep.
Because they do have scheduled days at school, obviously. But you also watch the way their teachers interact with them and the way their teachers lead them to other parts of the curriculum or other parts of the day, or get them excited about certain things or get their attention.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just pay attention to the teachers, pay attention to those who take care of your children and how they lead each other. I feel like
Uh-huh.
in a lot of ways, if we talk to each other that way, we would be far less entitled to leave terrible comments on each other's posts and, and see each other as bad people overall.
Yeah.
Because we're leading with some sort of grace, kindness, and trying to pull each other out of such a hurried world.
I think that's one of my favorite things about this conversation is that without knowing it, you have like hit on things that have been like my absolute hill to die on recently. And one of which is this, like, I've described it as a learning leader. Like, what would it look like if you led in this space more traditionally to how teachers lead in these spaces? And I think about even the way that you're talking about, like, how do we move to the next thing and how do we change gears and how do we uh, excite you to do the thing that we want you to do? But we want you to think about that. What does that look like to intrinsically motivate your student to be successful or to want to do this thing?
Right.
And like, those functions, the reasons why teachers talk to students that way is not because they are in third grade. It is because mentally That's how you excite someone to do the next thing. Like it's just like the
Yep.
science doesn't cease to exist once you're not in third grade. And so I love you hitting on that because like it is like kind of this rebellion of ultimate productivity and production at all times versus like what is best for you and your brain and your mind and like the where you are striving to be.
Yes. And production is good for certain parts, as we talked about. Getting up with your day and how you start your day, that's all leading to how you produce.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I start my day, there have been times where I have had to work like an insane amount of hours for a short or long time, um, however long, and because I worked over the weekend and on the weekend and several hours in the morning and at night, that just kept weighing,
Mm-hmm.
as you kept going on
Yep.
week 3, 4, or 5 or whatever, that just continued to weigh you down, and you realized that you had to go do something else,
Yeah.
anything else. And now that I'm not gainfully employed by the corporate world, I can say that there have been a couple of times where, let's say I finished something and and I knew for a fact that it's going to be rendering over 3 or 4 hours.
Yep.
I literally got myself up out of my chair, went to go have lunch, and then watched a movie and came back.
Yes.
And that, because I was at home, because well, I had the privilege of working from home.
Yeah.
Not everybody has that, I
Yeah.
understand. Especially when I think of my wife, who is a nurse, and she has to be out at dark 30,
Uh-huh.
and at a place to help people. But if people can, I highly encourage them to just get up and get out of their space.
Yep.
Even if it's something that they need to review for work or something like that, like do it in a different place.
Yeah.
Because productivity is only as good as our mental health, in a lot of ways. And I'm not entirely sure what the answer is to productivity, but yeah, as you were talking about in your space, you can do something different.
Yeah.
You can take yourself out of that situation to kind of improve mental health, and then productivity, of course, if that's what you need to do.
Well, and I think like one of the things that we simply know to be true is that there is a limit to how much you can output.
Mhm.
And so I think it is important to kind of reset this narrative outside of a corporate context and say the way to get the most out of any one person is not to push them 18 hours a day to be creating and delivering constantly. Like that leads to burnout. And I think about like, I am not an accountant, but I think about even in my accounting courses, when we talked about like depreciation of an asset, like a corporate structure and grind acknowledges eventual depreciation.
Yes.
It is not built to pour into you to get the most and the best out of who you are. Like even nature does not produce 365 days a year. There's a reality to cycles and seasons and rhythms and productivity realities that like the only thing in the natural world that keeps growing or maximizing without fail is a cancer cell. And
True.
so I think it is important to acknowledge no matter what your work looks like, no matter what context that looks like, you are responsible as the adult to have the understanding that you are not a drone.
Yep.
You are not a machine. You are not, and even machines have to be serviced or depreciated. And so I think there is a responsibility we have for caring for ourselves, no matter whether we work at home or save lives in a hospital. Like you and Laura are going to recharge differently, are going to heal differently, are going to restore yourselves differently. But you're both aware of the fact that that need exists. And
Yes.
so I think there is a need to have that conversation.
And you mentioned cycles. Like it's all about cycles.
Yeah.
And knowing what works or what should be in what cycle and what cycles should not mix.
Hmm.
Because as probably some great poet or something said, scholar said, "There's always going to be work.
Yeah.
There's always going to be work, um, and you're going to shovel through work. You're going to do a great job, and you could get laid off, or you could get rewarded for that work,
Yep.
or that work just goes unseen for decades.
Yep.
There's always going to be work." And just finding what part of the cycle you're in, naming that part of the cycle, and realizing how big that cycle should be, or that part of that component of the cycle should be. I think a lot of people don't necessarily have that luxury,
Yep.
unfortunately, because of just big C capitalism. And some people like me are very fortunate to be able to pick and choose when I can engage in certain things. I
Yep.
can pick and choose and when and if I'll go on one of my kids' field trips with him. I can pick and choose at what point of the day I'm going to start preparing dinner for the family, things like that. My wife, on the other hand, cannot because of
Yep.
her schedule. People who probably work in a factory setting, welders, doctors, police, law enforcement, all kinds of
Yep.
people
Yep.
can't necessarily pick that. Um, and sometimes I wonder, like, at what point in time do people stop picking those cycles that will keep them running all the time? But I don't know. That's just something I think about as somebody who consumes science fiction at probably
Uh-huh.
unfortunate rate.
Well, and I think like what I appreciate, I appreciate a lot of things about the conversation, but one of the things that I appreciate for sure is like I think even what I'm hearing is like this advocacy for like take a step back and just acknowledge
Mhm.
that maybe the context you're in does not have your best good in mind. It has its bottom line or maximizing shareholder interest or return or whatever. And so that, I think what we're saying is there's an element of responsibility each of us hold for our own awareness, care, well-being, where I think Patrick and I talk about this a lot. Like we grew up in this era of like just go to college, you'll get a good job, like everything will be fine. And like this kind of belief that like the structure will take care of you.
Mm.
And I think that that is a like I'm going to tie right back into the sci-fi. Like there's a danger to plugging yourself in that space.
There's
And thinking that like, oh, my well-being is being considered when I come into this space to do this thing. Like, no, it's a transaction, but you have to maintain your agency in your own well-being because corporate America is not highly concerned with your personal well-being.
not really, unless you're producing something. You do. I mean, stepping back, you do have people in those positions that are very human,
Mm-hmm.
have very human reactions to you coming in and say, "Oh, there he is."
Hi, Mav. I'm going to say hi to Trevail. You want to say hi?
I wanted to ask about Matt forever ago, but I didn't see him.
You got to hop up here. Come on. Come here. Or just stay there. Okay. Don't say hi then. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
It's good to see his face.
Come here. Yeah. Oh, say hi. Look. Say hi. Yeah, I know. You love him. Okay, go play.
It's good to see him up and healthy.
Yeah, he's the best boy.
All right. Where was that? Corporate America. As far as corporate America is concerned, when it comes to, let's look back at something like a review.
Yeah.
A quarterly review or whatever. They ask you about the goals. They ask you about the productivity. They may have comments on either or those things. But at the same time, that's all in service of the output.
Yep.
The goal. Is this person who we put in this seat doing what we are paying them for? That transaction we talked about. And if not, what can we do to help them get there? And the help in that statement isn't necessarily a help in like, oh man, like, you really need help moving that couch? I'll be right over there. You know,
Correct.
it's more like help as in like, here's this thing you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
You're not doing it right now. Let us help you
You
understand
do that thing.
how you're doing this. And, you know, if you're not helping us and we are helping you, then we will help you out the door.
Yes.
Um, and so uh, I say all that about corporate America, but I also think about so many faces that I've encountered along the way that have genuinely helped as humans first in various situations, and people I've helped in
Yeah.
various situations, whether they were buried in work and I stepped in to help
Yep.
them, or they saw that I was failing in
Yep.
part of my job and, gave me a quick like, hey man, you know, this thing is falling behind in a major way. You might need to step it up a little bit. Um, but we all had that understanding that the transaction of the thing is how we survive, I
Yep.
guess,
Yep.
in that situation and in that cycle of work, that we survive by pulling each other up and conversating with each other.
Yeah.
There are very few workplaces, if any, that I've been into that whether you were the kid that got hired because you knew somebody or you were just starting out, that I guess you were left behind in that way. Um, and if you were left behind, people would help you. If you were a type of person who would step on other people, there's a good chance that you wouldn't be around after a
Yep.
while.
Yep.
So,
Well, and I think there are like thank you for bringing this up. Like I think, we are a collection of the people who've invested in us and the people we've got the opportunity to invest in. And so in that space, those people exist and there are spaces where those cultures are positive and good. Um and like that needed to be addressed. So thank you. I think a question I would ask you, because this is something you brought up early and like mentorship Monday question boxes on Instagram. Like I think one of the questions I heard from a lot of people that I feel like you had a plan to address was like, so I'm out of college. Uh where how do I find someone, seek out this mentorship relationship? And you've already given us a pretty clear picture of like, the YouTube and the websites and the spaces, the live videos, like, but if somebody were really looking for a mentor, do you have any advice for how they would go about doing that?
as somebody who watched other people find mentors very quickly and easily, um, one of the things that always surprised me is how people were looking outside of their field for mentors, people who had no knowledge of their field. Sometimes, well, a lot of times those would work out because they were seeking out a specific part
Okay.
of their career that they had already honed in on. Most people I don't think are that geared to see like a specific thing and be like, oh, I need this mentor to talk to me about selling things to
Yep.
people. And so I'm going to find somebody who sells something and write down every single word that they say.
Uh-huh.
I was not one of those people. I was more or less one of those people that once I saw knowledge in somebody, once I saw a caring in somebody, um, and not just that knowledge, caring, and then wrapping that into how they showed up
Yep.
and their ability to work. That was one of those things that like ticked me off to like, oh, okay, I might need to like cozy up this person a little bit more and darken their
Yep.
office door a little bit more, and maybe even ping them in chat a little bit more. And I'm kind of the master of like finding the people that I want to gain knowledge from and not necessarily letting them know that uh,
Uh-huh.
that I'm clinging on like a parasite and extracting whatever I can. Um, but when it comes to you're talking about people who are starting out, when it comes to people who are starting out, if you've got an internship, if you've got a professor in school At the University of Utah, they use adjunct professors quite extensively. I don't know how other schools do that because I've been in Utah forever. But specifically, one adjunct professor who is a current principal owner at a studio. Um, I gleaned onto him because he was the only professor that had like real world motion design
Yep.
experience. He owned his own studio, and he he kind of, I guess at that time we our class kind of met him at a bad spot in his
Okay.
kind of like before sabbatical spot in his career, because he talked to us a couple times about selling things.
Yeah.
As a designer, you want to make cool things, you want to get people excited about stuff, you want to tell stories, but you're also attaching that to selling something.
Yep.
Um, you can think of any Super Bowl commercial for the past decade where you're just like, oh my God, that, you turn it out, you're like, oh, America's so great. We're so great. This is awesome. And then it's a Ford truck, or
Uh-huh. Sure is.
it's,
Budweiser.
a bag of Doritos that makes you laugh.
Yep.
You know, it's just belly laughs. And then you realize, it's the bar of chocolate.
Uh-huh.
It's chips. But yeah, going back to being new in the industry and finding people, like, be aware, step back in the situation you're in, see those people, even if they're people that you kind of consider rivals in your
Yeah.
classes. There are 3 or 4 people I called the golden children in my graduating class that I eventually became friends with, and eventually loved, and currently watch them having kids and moving on to different parts
Yep.
of their career. And they taught me a lot because they taught me professionalism. They taught me craftsmanship. They taught me how to just not take myself and everything around me so seriously.
Yeah.
And then you also have those professors, you get into internships and jobs, and you start seeing people who may not be making the greatest thing on planet Earth, but they're teaching you.
Yep.
Um, there's always some sort of lesson you can learn in most any environment, whether it's a person that you don't like or it's a person that you strive to be in the future. That's, just stepping back and being able to recognize those people is, I would say, step one, really.
This could be this could be like 4 hours long, and I'm not going to let it be. I'm going to hold us at least
My
pretty
bad.
close to our time. No, like, thank you. I think this is like mentorship part one. If you're willing to do this again, I think it'd be really helpful, because I think, again, my purpose in having real conversations with real people is like, we're looking for more than just do it. We're looking for more than that 30-second soundbite. Like, I think even one of the things you just said, like, we can learn. Like, one of the neat things about learning, like the function of learning, is that you can learn from the good and the bad.
Yeah.
There is no loss if you're willing to learn. And so even if this is a great leader or a terrible leader or a good colleague or a bad colleague, you can actually learn in both of those contexts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, like, I like to say all the time, like, I really like to win. So I love a win-win situation, because I like to go into this knowing I'm going to win. And like, that is what education provides in this landscape. Is it might not have been fun or comfortable or easy, or pick your word, but did you learn something? And as long as you can learn something, like, we can find value in that space. I have 2 more questions. Do you have time for 2 more questions?
Sure. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So I'm going to springboard right from that learning to, what does it look like to stay teachable even as your career progresses? And then I also want to think about, like, how do we encourage people to stay teachable? So I want to know from you, how do you stay teachable? But then I want to talk about how we build that muscle or mechanism also.
Mm. I often say that one of the things that keeps me moving towards a goal, or achieving even a milestone, or at the very least starting my work and getting to a certain point, is often something that people don't use, which is fear. Um, the fear of missing a deadline,
Mhm.
the fear of not being chosen for a project that you know
Yep.
you can do, the fear of looking back years from now and being like, I sat on my butt for however long and did nothing.
Yep.
Fear kept me emailing people and building my website and my reel and all kinds of stuff, even though I was like, I also feared nobody would ever find me. I would
Yep.
never get another project. I wouldn't make any money for my family. And I don't know, maybe I would have to go pick some job way outside of my
Yep.
current sphere. Fear may not be a great motivator for everybody. Some people break down, other people just be like, you know what, I'm out.
Yep.
Um, but realizing that that fear isn't all it is also another thing. That I realized that I do have a desire to excel and to make generally just make clients happy with
Yep.
me in what
Yep.
I do. Not like a people pleaser type thing.
Right. But like,
Sure, sure, yeah.
yeah.
But like, yeah, like at the very least, being the human being that other human beings want to come back to,
Yeah.
time and time again, because deep down inside, I want to be somebody who is needed,
Yep.
somebody who's called upon, um, even relied upon
Yeah.
from time to time. And if I look back at myself and realize that people were finding me unreliable and they couldn't um, depend on me at all, that would just break my heart.
Uh-huh.
Kill me. So hopefully I answered your question.
No, I think it's like I think it's so helpful because I think we often demonize the function of fear.
Mm,
And so I think it's important to hear it talked about as a tool. You know, fear has a part to play in this story. And I think even like I appreciate you saying like you want someone to be happy with this, not because I didn't produce this as an effort to make people please me, but if this is a function where I'm serving or providing or creating for you,
correct.
yeah, I do want that to make your life better. I want it to solve whatever problem brought us to this situation.
Mhm.
So I think that like, you've created such a healthy framework for the function of fear. Um, that obviously has a dark side, but there's a dark side to any motivator,
Yeah.
right? Like that's not alone in the function of fear.
Right. Yeah, and I think that that dark side you talk about is definitely a thing that designers specifically always cling to, because whether or not we show you that we're affected by your feedback, or if something doesn't land the way that we expect it to, um, we want to make that right. We want to get that right. And having ourselves open to learning, specifically going back to your point about being open to learn, um, you round that fear out into a sharp tool.
Mm-hmm.
So that way you can cut through whatever you might be feeling in that particular day about that particular feedback, critique,
Yep.
the person who's standing in front of you that you may not like, you may or may not like. You carve through that to realize, like, oh, that person actually showed me a flaw in myself and something I need to learn, or that
Yes.
person showed me a technique. When I look back at it and I go, oh, okay, that 0.5 seconds of that animation was sharp and slick, and I need to know how to do that because that's
Yep.
pretty awesome. Or at the very least, just saying that you appreciate something about somebody else's stuff
Yeah.
can open up conversations that you didn't even know you were you were going to be open to have with people that you totally didn't expect to have conversations with.
And this is going to be my last question because I respect your time. But I have more. So when I said mentorship take two, I meant it.
Yay!
When you think about encouraging someone, like I think fear and openness feel like they run in opposition or that they could.
Mhm.
And so I think if I could have you kind of wrap up so much of what we've talked about today, like how do you remain open to feedback and open to growth when there are plenty of hard and hurtful things? Like how do you keep yourself open and how do you maintain that?
Keeping myself open, typically it's realizing that maybe that person who's telling me that that part of the animation or part of the story didn't land for them probably has a point. Whether or not I think that animation is flashy or really cool, um, there is a current uh, uh, contract I'm working on right now where, I was given some feedback about toning down certain things, and it didn't hurt my feelings because it was like, no, you're right. That was just like way too flashy.
Yep.
This thing over here is doesn't need to be the center of attention. This thing needs to be the center of
Yep.
attention, and it needs to be called out, and it needs to be refined
Yep.
and shaped, and made more understandable by everybody else, not just me.
Yep.
Because there are so many times I feel where, going back to raising kids, you want to point something out or be excited about something, and your child's just going to sit there and go, okay,
Yep.
all right, back to what I was doing.
I don't care.
They turn and literally go the other direction. You're just like, but it was and that's part of being a designer, is like that flashy thing that you thought was going to catch somebody's eye would be like 0.25 seconds of interest.
Yep.
And you need to move on.
Yep.
And then from there, you open yourself up to, okay, so why was it
Yep.
not interesting to that person? Did they just not understand? And from there, I love asking questions of interviewers and whatnot, of people who critique my work, because then I can get a better understanding of what didn't land for them.
Yeah.
Not just taking feedback and reading feedback and then changing what I made,
Right.
but getting a better understanding of like, okay, so this is feedback. Why was this part of your feedback? Not saying that you're dumb for having that feedback.
Right. But like, help me.
Yeah. Because I don't want to have to do this 2 or 3 more rounds.
Well, and like, I love, this is why I asked. I love that, like, I think sometimes when we think about being open, it is perceived as vulnerable. Like, I want to be defensive and I'm supposed to be open. But I feel like the picture you've shown is that open is the best defense because I'm not being defensive. I actually would like to learn.
Yeah.
And I think if we can change, like, I love that we positioned fear as like a helpful tool. And I think we're doing the same thing with the concept of being open. Like, open is actually the safest defensive stance. Where I think walled and closed off is like perceived as so much safer.
Yeah.
But it's really not if the goal is to get better.
Yes.
And so I thank you for that. Thank you for all of this. But that was the right place to just kind of wrap and close that, because I think just you look at some things differently that I think would be helpful for others to see. Because these things are just true, no matter who you are and what your role is. But like entering this conversation with a desire to be made better from someone's feedback is the safest way to have that conversation.
Yes. Openness is helpful for productivity, creativity, understanding, getting to know other people's positions on things. And then from there, you can make a better informed decision to how you might want to change things yourself, the things around you, stuff like that.
If someone is in the need for motion work, how do they find and reach you?
They can email me at hi at campbellmotiondesign.com. I also have a website, campbellmotiondesign.com. I'm also on the LinkedIn as probably a more buttoned up and quiet version of myself. And then Instagram, which I don't use as much, is also Campbell Motion Design. Trying to keep that brand intact, I guess, somehow, so people can find me.
I love it. It's helpful. It matters. So thank you for helping people navigate that space, and thank you for helping us look at things a little bit differently. I think by and large, we're a connection of the wisdom our people have shared with us. So thank you for sharing your wisdom and your insight. And I will be pestering you again.
Oh, pester me all day long. I don't care. I'm here. I'm always here.
Amazing. Happy Friday. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye, friend.
Bye.